Hello and welcome back to the European Research Showcase. My name is Sam. I'm back once again with another piece of incredible content for you. Over the 2 days of 28th and 29th of April, if you're watching it on the day, hello. If you're watching it back in the future, hello. We have had over 50 researchers from across Europe telling us about who they are, what they do, why it's awesome, and what they want you to know about. I'm going to say very little more and bring in our next guest. So say hello to the wonderful Robin Hayward. Hey Robin, how you doing?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing not too bad, not too bad. I have spoken to so many awesome people over these past couple of weeks, and there's so many cool things going out as part of this event. I'm just really, really looking forward to hearing what people think about it. First question that I have been asking everybody that I've been doing these chats with is, who are you and what do you do?
Well, as you introduced me, I'm Robin, but specifically, I'm a forest ecologist slash science communicator. So yeah, my day to day is somewhere between science communication, working out how to talk about all things science and trees at the University of Leeds, and then also doing a little bit of forest ecology on the side. So answering questions about how to plant and restore forests. Most recently, we've planted an entire woodland designed to answer cool science questions. 66,000 trees working towards that specific goal and being a little bit easier to study than just woodlands in nature. So yeah, that's the gist of what I do.
And so, like, if you've got like a team of you doing that sort of thing, what does that look like? What's the team makeup like, and what are people doing?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, as I say, we've just planted the woodlands. It's a huge project. My main role within that team is translating that science so other people can hear more about it, which is really useful because people need to understand the science if that science has any value for people to act on. So outside of just me, we have the core academics who spend all their time just doing the science, getting the data out of these trees. So that's Kat Scott and Tom Sloan. Then we've got the sustainability team who manage loads of stuff day to day. We also have a huge network of people in the States who actually take care of the forest outside of the data stuff, plus people from other institutions, the White Rose Forest, DEFRA, the United Bank of Carbon, all kind of coming together to make this work. So yeah, science is never just one person; it's this massive, massive team.
No, it does sound like there's a lot of you involved there. How how did your role come to exist? Like, what was the inspiration for it or the motivation for it?
I think my role kind of came in on the basis that we wanted to tell more and more people what we were doing. And there's a tendency that scientists spend a lot of their time doing the comm stuff and then forgetting to actually do the science. So by being able to have someone who is a qualified scientist, who it's their dedicated role to kind of talk about it a little bit more, that just really frees up everyone to focus on the things they really want to be doing. And yeah, we were really lucky to get a pot of money that means that I can have my job, which isn't the case in a lot of places. But yeah, that's how it came about.
And so, do you spend a lot of time working with other members of the team just to find out the messages that they're hoping to put across? Is that a lot of
Yeah,
collaborative
absolutely.
work in that way?
Yeah, so I get to play about quite a lot with the actual data and kind of what people are studying in the ground, but it's mostly their projects. I get to come in and advise. Sometimes that advice is ecological, talking about when we're designing those projects. Sometimes it's at the far end where either they're talking to the public or talking to even other scientists. So they're going to conferences and they say, we've got this amazing new finding. How do we tell people about it? So that's looking at posters, presentations, even policy reports. So yeah, it's good to be in at all ends of things, and I get to see so much cool science coming through. Everything trees.
I think it's something that like a lot of people who are involved in science communication and public engagement or other types of engagement across academic spheres think about their audience being like public, but actually there's so many different audiences in there. So hearing you talk about your project team going and speaking to other scientists and policymakers, that's like a really important part of what they do, I imagine.
Yeah, I think there's a real tendency to kind of assume that people who are professionally in the field will do all the work for you. But they are there and they are so interested that they can bypass all the jargon because they know it all. So just making it a little bit more fun to engage with just gets the message across so much easier because in the end, we are all the public. It's just, yeah, the more easy you can make something to understand, the better it's going to work because everyone has different specialisms. So yeah, it's really good to have the chance to get things a little bit better communicated.
Yeah, a little bit more memorable. It's the only way you can embed those messages into people's psyche, I guess, in order
Oh,
to
for
make sure
sure.
that the messages really get across. You've touched on it already, but tell us what an average day looks like for you. Is there an average day?
No, definitely not. There's an average start to the day. The average start to the day is the same as everyone's, I think, pretty much emails. I've been told that's not great for my productivity, but emails are the average start to the day. Then branching out from there, it can be anything from kind of design work, kind of making stuff in graphics software, to making videos. It can be writing blogs, talking to academics. There's a lot of meetings, just trying to get those ideas in early and just discuss the science itself. Talking with people outside of the University of Leeds, trying to really share what we're doing and the results that we're finding. Uh, so much stuff I can end up doing day to day. I went into schools a couple of weeks back and did a few talks, trying to again share with more people the answers about trees. I spent most of January and February just going out to woodlands and planting trees, collecting data. So it was, yeah, there's no average day, but that's part of the fun of it.
I'm really jealous of you getting to spend time just like out in nature in a woodland.
Yeah, I will say January and February in a woodland that's not quite been created yet, so it's mostly a frosty, damp field. Maybe less idyllic than the vision you're getting, but definitely nice to be out and about.
Yeah, my vision in my head was just like an early morning, like a kind of damp woodland with lots of like sunbeams coming through, but perhaps not so much of the.
We got a few of those days. I
Okay,
won't say they're all of it, but
okay.
yeah,
So you talked about there not being an average day at all, which seems like a real privilege to have in the sense that you can do lots of different things over the course of a week, over the course of even a day. I imagine it's something that a lot of the people that we speak to as part of these things will say that working in the job that they do provides them with just such a breadth and diversity of stuff to be enjoying their time with, which
yeah,
just
for sure.
sounds so much fun to spend your time doing. What would you say is the one thing that you would want public audiences to know about the work that you do?
I think the one thing is that a tree is not the same as every other tree. So that's I think the most important bit of advice that you can put into practice if you're ever in the state of having a garden perhaps and planting a tree, or even if you're planting a woodland, knowing that an oak is different to a pine and a holly. It sounds obvious, but they have, as well as being totally different shapes and like your Christmas tree looking very different to a lot of the trees you see outside, they also do different things for the wildlife. So knowing what wildlife is in your region and what tree you need to plant to support it. Also, they sometimes work differently with different soils, just really understanding where you're putting that tree and what tree is best. So yeah, different trees are different. And if you're creating a woodland, having lots and lots of different types of different trees just makes everything work even better.
I imagine that like trees themselves and individual species will act very much as keystone species. Is that right? Like they're pivotal to their habitat.
Yeah, absolutely. So a keystone species being something that really kind of changes the entire landscape around it by kind of affecting the environment and seeing what other things can live there. I think oak trees are one of the big ones in a lot of our broadleaf forests because they're such a large proportion of the trees. It can really make a big difference as to what can live on there. Uh, a lot of the time, you'll have other kind of secondary species that will affect things. So the animals around. So one of the main things you get is deer, which can really affect how forests grow up. So that's something we're really looking at as well. So not just the trees themselves, but how they interact with other things. But for sure, if you've got a different type of forest, like the pine plantation forest we have for a lot of the UK, very different wildlife than a nice kind of ancient woodland with kind of the dappled sunshine, the big leaves coming through, maybe even a few mossy rocks. Yeah, you get completely different environments depending on what's planted and the reasons behind it. Because we plant so much for timber and even just for carbon sequestration, we sometimes forget to plant for biodiversity and wildlife.
Well, we're almost at the end of our time, but there's one last thing I wanted to ask you about, which was you're working very much on UK woodlands right now, but that's very different from your previous research, right? You spent a lot of time on rainforests in the past. So, what's that difference like looking at UK versus something a bit further afield?
Yeah, so I mean, I mostly work in the UK now. That's really nice to actually be around home and working on my local habitats a lot more. I previously worked, my PhD was on restoration of the Malaysian, it was on restoration of the Malaysian rainforest after logging. And that's just a completely different thing, because even though you're planting trees in both cases and you're trying to restore these areas of land to a forest state, a rainforest might have a few hundred different tree species that you need to plant in, whereas in the UK, we're dealing with tens of species. So it's just a completely different scale, and you need to work within a much more diverse area in rainforests. So it can be a lot harder to get right. It's pretty difficult in the UK, but you really need to start thinking more and more about kind of diseases, infection diversity, having that genetic diversity in tropical areas. It's something that really does make that effect as you go into the long term. So lots of similarities, but it's just kind of the next level up in complexity. But again, it's knowing which species is right for the location you're planting it in, because all trees are different and they all have different requirements.
Awesome. Well, Robin, thank you so much for coming to chat with us and tell us about the work that you do. Where can people find out more about you if they wanted to?
They can find us at the University of Leeds website, specifically leaf.leeds.ac.uk is a good place to start. We're also on Twitter at Leeds_Leaf.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, folks, watching at home, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit the like button or the retweet button or the share button, depending on where it is that you're watching us on, whether it's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or wherever. If you get any comments or questions, pop them below. I think, or on some platforms, pop them above. They'll appear somewhere. But otherwise, there's going to be so much more content from the European Research Showcase coming. So, yeah, please check it out and enjoy.